Welcome to the Power of Great. I'm your host, Matt Crane, and every single week, we literally look to help you enhance your life by showing you that your current situation is not your defining moment. We do that through bringing guests, entrepreneurs, and individuals from different backgrounds, different walks of life, with different stories, but one very common thing. They pushed through to the other side of greatness, and they now are truly walking in their purpose because they recognized that their current situation was not going to define them. And on today's episode, I have the privilege and the honor of interviewing Mr. Calvin Wayman. My man Calvin is an author, speaker, sales expert, and social media entrepreneur. In his early 20s, being awkward and shy, he held a company record for the worst performance as a sales agent ever. After almost being fired, he found a mentor, went from having the worst performance to now having the best. In the spring of 2015, he quit his day job to pursue his dream of working for himself. He is always challenging himself by pushing the boundaries of his own fear. He attributes his tenacity of never giving up to the lessons he learned going out and knocking on random houses, selling door to door. By the end of that year, he started a social media business, Cobbes Media, that would go on to get him featured in Entrepreneur Magazine, Social Media Examiner, and the Huffington Post. And just this summer, he released his first book, which debuted on Amazon's top 100 of all the books in the success category. And that book is Fish Out of Water, The Guide to Achieving Breakthrough and Permanently Transforming into the New You. Calvin Wayman, welcome to the Power of Great.
Brother, that was an awesome intro. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I tell you what, Calvin, we were talking a little bit offline. And, you know, over the past 90 days, I've really ramped up paying attention to you because we caught each other's attention through social media like most entrepreneurs or
Yep.
Online magnets, if you will.
Yep.
And something that I just truly appreciate about you is your raw authenticity. From the way that you
Thank
organically engage your audience to how you don't try to put on fancy productions and how you just legitimately enjoy the fact that whether it's one person or 1 million, the impact is something that's so important to you. And,
Totally.
you know, that is something that just really struck me is for someone who literally went from being the worst to first and then leaving that behind to start a social media business. Talk to me about what led you to that decision and what really is Cobbes Media?
Totally. So the thing that made me leave, I mean, to be honest, I always wanted to leave and do my own thing. Really, the thing that even got me into sales was I read my first book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm sure you've heard of it, right? From Robert Kiyosaki. And in that book, he says, no matter what business you get into, you need to know how to sell. So I was like, well, I feel like I'm an entrepreneur. I at least want to be. So I'm going to learn how to sell. And so you said that whole thing of how I was horrible, and I was, and then came out of that. But after I learned the skill, I always wanted to go off and do my own thing. But I'll be totally open here. I just didn't because I was afraid to. You know, I had so much fear that kept me stuck and in the employee job longer than I needed to be, quite frankly. But what made me finally jump is actually something very different than most people, I think, expect or talk about. People talk about needing to have a why or the thing that you're going after, something that's so positive that will overwhelm the negative of the fear. But I'll be honest with you, Matt, it wasn't something super positive that made me quit. It was a bigger fear that swallowed the smaller fear. That's really what it was. I sat down with myself one day and was like, what happens 10 years from now if I don't do anything? And I closed my eyes and I had this moment where I had a conversation with my 10-year older self and was like, dude, what should I do here? And my 10-year older self was like, well, let me tell you, as we get older, you and I, as we get older, you're going to have more responsibility, not less. So if you're ever going to do it now. So I did. I quit 2 days after that, and it was before I even knew what I was going to do next. I didn't have anything lined up. I had tried that before. I tried doing side hustles along with my business or with my employee job, and it had some success, but nothing close to where I needed it to be. And that is just that's been really a big lesson that I've used in entrepreneurship all the time is you'd have to do things before you see the whole staircase. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I quit anyway. And then it started to open up what the next step was after that. Right. So you mentioned I own Cobbes Media. That didn't come right away. I wish it would have. Man, I've been so envious. I was so envious of people. Like when I was trying to figure out what my passion was, I was so envious of those people that said, oh, I knew what my passion was since I was 5 years old and I've been doing it my whole life. I'm like, here I am 27 and I don't even know what it is yet. And while I was in that space of not knowing, I was like, you know what, then I'm going to at least keep developing myself to get better so that when I land the thing that I want to do, I can just crush it. And so right after I quit my day job, I actually moved from Utah to Southern California to sell door to door. And that's what I did. I just got into door to door, crazy experiences there, awesome stories that were so heavy and so at the time, so almost depressing and filled with so much anxiety, but such valuable lessons that I would not wish that they were gone because of what I've learned from them. And while I was there in Southern California, I started connecting with great like-minded people that were building their businesses too. And through those associations and getting to being in the game, I ended up first falling onto Periscope was the first thing, which was a live streaming app, still is. And that what got me into the social media game. And because I got into that, I started to realize that it's not just Periscope I like, it's the things I like about Periscope, that it's new, that it's cutting edge, that it's where technology is, it's where people are communicating now and connecting is through social media. And from there, went from Periscope to just branching out to social media in general, and then created Cobbes Media. Cobbes Media is what that is it's a social media management service primarily for entrepreneurs and influencers. So I help people that don't have a huge fan base or a huge following show up, stand out, and get seen beyond 97% of everybody else on social media.
Yeah, I love that. And the one thing that I loved what you said there, Calvin, is a bigger fear that swallowed the smaller fear. And,
yes.
I really hope that our audience heard that. And I want to highlight that for a moment. So for everyone that's out there on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and iTunes, I first want to give a big shout out to the team at Rush Impact Marketing and my man, Jeremy Warner, for all the amazing behind the scenes work that they do to help power the power of great, if you will. And then on top of that, you'll notice if you're watching this video on our YouTube channel that'll go out across 6 different continents, the folks at sayiwant.com have supported the Power of Great podcast, and I'm wearing one of their featured lids, if you will, today, and I'm just so honored to do that on this particular podcast with my man Calvin. But, Calvin, you said this, once again, a bigger fear that swallowed the smaller fear, and I believe that a true entrepreneur has all these tiny baby fears.
Yes.
There's always one Moby Dick fear, if you will, that comes in and just swarms it all. So kind of take a few moments and walk our audience through that big fear that just swallowed all those smaller ones.
So I had the smaller fears of, what if I don't make it? What if I'm homeless for a little bit? I had a wife and a 1-year-old. What if we have to live on the streets? What if I look like a loser? What if I don't make money when I should? Like all of those smaller fears that kept me staying put. But the bigger fear was 10 years down the road, nothing has effing changed. And what really was the big thing was, what if I didn't care anymore? What if the fire that I had burning inside of me to do something great died? The fear of that fire that I had in me dying over 10 years of me staying at a job and not going after the thing I really wanted to do, that is what made me just quit. I was like, you know what? I would rather try and follow this fire and fail and die trying than just quit. And so that's what did it. That's what it was.
I tell you what, Calvin, that is one of the things that I truly do respect about you the most, is that there's no faking that, ladies and gentlemen, is that for so many people, they have these moments of those feel-good moments that get you excited and get you motivated and get you elevated, and then yet they stay stationary. I see it all the time. And for Calvin, the biggest fear was losing that fire, was losing that drive. And he knew the only way to pursue what he truly wanted to accomplish in life, and that was working for himself, was that activity was going to be the ultimate motivator. So, you know, Calvin, you also brought up another great point about Periscope. With all these social mediums that are sitting out here, with the ever-changing landscape, and now what we're really seeing is a lot of competition.
Yes.
For me, personally, the power of great was truly built off of Periscope.
Beautiful.
It may have laid inside of me, but Periscope opened up the door for me to create this concept, build an audience, start to be able to create influencer relationships, now be considered an influencer on certain applications. And what I wanted to ask for you to really detail out to our audience is that we all have those social media channels that we like, or that we groove with. How important is it to utilize the ones that you really like or groove with the most while you're trying to figure out all these other ones?
I think you should. I think you should use the 80-20 principle. Like, put most of your attention, like what I do with my social media company, Cobbes Media, most of the time, like if I have somebody coming on that has almost no social media presence, we focus on one, Facebook. That's the big one. So get on Facebook, figure out the language of Facebook, you know, because that's where you're going to have the biggest bang for your buck. There's a lot of other things, and I'm all for reaching as much as you can, but in time. What you don't want, you mentioned the word stationary. A lot of times if you're going across too many things at once, it's overwhelming and you end up just feeling like you're in this sea of madness. So pick one and go with it. There's this really great book called The One Thing that has helped me massively. I don't know if this quote comes from The One Thing, but I beautiful. It's a great book. So there's this quote that came in my space sometime when I was feeling so overwhelmed trying to do so much at once. And it was, you can do anything. Remember that, guys. You can do anything. You can't do everything, but you can do anything. So find the thing that you want to drive deep with and go with that. That's where you're going to become excellent. That's where you're going to become great.
You know, another thing you do, Calvin, very well, and once again, is you know, I'm just now really learning a lot about you, and having you on the podcast, once again, is amazing because you have a lot of awesome things happening in your life. You know, another cool thing that just recently happened to you was you were voted from Influencive, one of the top 30 under 30, which I thought was well-deserved, and you were on with a cast of people that are just absolutely just doing big things.
Yes.
But one thing that you do very well is you really do keep the main thing the main thing. You're very consistent with your message. You're very consistent with the delivery. And do you find with those people that you work with that either have big social media presence or have minimal social media presence, they're all over the place at first?
No, they keep the main thing the main thing. They're focused and they get really good at making it feel like they're everywhere and they end up going there. But let's use Gary Vaynerchuk for an example. Gary Vaynerchuk is everywhere on social media, but he is not spending, he spends a shitload of time with his audience. He does. But what I know, just following him very closely and actually getting to hang out with him a little bit and things like that, is he goes and does his stuff. He lives his life, and that becomes his content. And because he just did a keynote last week that D-Rock recorded, he can then not only make that a daily V, but that same content is going to be bite-sized pieces of social media snippets that go through Facebook, that go through Instagram, that create Instagram graphics that his team will then go create and post. You know, all of that because of that one piece of content that he did. Or he'll do his Ask Gary V show a couple times a week. And content from that can get spread out in other places. And then he's in the phone interacting with his people. But he's very, very focused in the way he does it. And this is the most hustle person that I know. So as much as you can, especially getting started, don't spread yourself too thin. Be impactful with one area and just drive deep.
Speaking of Gary Vaynerchuk, we all have those people that we look to emulate ourselves after. I'm not a big fan of the word imitate because I don't believe that we can imitate anyone because we were all given our own version of DNA and our special gifts. But emulation, I believe, is huge. And Gary encourages that. And
100%.
And for you, he's definitely been that one influencer that just resonated with you and that you honestly feel has been that guiding force. So, what really set you to Gary Vee at first? And then, honestly, I know our audience would love to know, is he the same person one-on-one and in a group setting that he is through social media?
I think that's two questions, and the answer is one answer to both of them. The thing that led me to him and why I still stick with him is how real he is. He's so real and so authentic. And so that answers the second question, which is yes, he is exactly the person that you see on video, like better than anything I've hung out with other influencers, and a lot of them are very, I don't want to discount any influencer that's out there because they're that way, but he's got nothing to hide. Like like he Daily V, he videos his freaking life, he's always speaking his mind on Ask Gary Vee or different events. And so that's what's drawn me to him and why I love him is he's just real. Like, I've been in a background where some people in maybe the entrepreneurial space of like in sales or network marketing, which I love. I have a passion for both of network marketing and sales. It's done a lot for me in my life. But there's this small subset of people that try to portray having a badass life without working your face off for it. That doesn't freaking exist from my experience. What I've seen and what Gary Vaynerchuk shows is you have to work your face off to get it. And that's okay. You just need to know that, because this is why I think that's important. I think it's important to know you have to work your face off, because when you start working at it, if you think it was supposed to be easy, you're going to start looking inward and think you're just an idiot or that you're unworthy or you don't know enough. I had pieces of that in different aspects of my entrepreneurial journey. I was like, I want this so bad, but it's freaking hard. I just needed to know that it was normal, that it was going to feel that way. And I want people to know that too. It's going to be hard, but that's okay. I mean, just know it. There's nothing wrong with you if it's taking a while to figure stuff out. It's getting up and spitting the blood out and going after it. I think people just need to know that, because there's too many people that just say, oh, this is so easy. You can work 2 hours a day and you're going to be a millionaire. You're going to be laying on the beach. That's cool. You can get some people in, but that doesn't help you very much in the long run, which I'm all about, that Gary Vaynerchuk talks about too. Why I believe in building relationships and all this stuff is, what are you in for? The long game, hopefully. Because if you're in it for the short game, you're going to get a few people that like you or that follow you. Then they're going to find out who you really are, and then you're screwed. So why don't you just be who you are from the get, as Gary Vee would say. From the very beginning, let people that don't resonate with you don't follow you. Awesome. You're going to start out having less followers than maybe some of your counterparts. Awesome. But then in the long run, you're going to have a tribe of people that resonate so much, and you're going to create something super, super special. So that's my thought process on it.
No, I absolutely love that. And I say this all the time, is that when you're really driving your message home and you're really starting to walk in your purpose, your circle will shrink before it expands.
Yes.
And, with Gary Vaynerchuk, one of the things that I love the most about him is that he and Grant Cardone have probably been the two biggest influences for me, with Grant being one, yes, Gary being kind of 1A. But, when Gary Vaynerchuk did his 8-stream live during the launch of the Ask Gary book, and the one thing he said in there is that I was actually able to get live with him on that.
Awesome.
And the one thing he said is that he monitors social media, and whether we want to believe it or not, influencers like him who have access to all these social media managers still like getting to the ground level.
Yes. Yes.
And he said his number one rule is, I don't overlook one follower for 1,000.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, Calvin, it just really struck me so deep. And what you said there was so amazing, because I believe we get stuck wanting all the big numbers and we fail to see the true targets that have been with us from day one. Would you not agree?
Totally. I actually just said this on a previous podcast. Remember that your followers are people too. Like, that sounds very weird, but remember that your followers are people too. So treat them like that, connect with them, do the unscalable so that you can scale, right? What that means is get in the trenches and talk to people. I can't remember exactly where we met, but I probably sent you like a voice message or something somewhere in there so that you know that this is a real dude. But there's all these tools that can copy and paste a message. But I want people to know when I'm interacting with them that it's me interacting with them. So I go out of my way to do that. And it's created some really cool effects that I couldn't have predicted that have been kind of interesting. Like, I'll give you a quick example. A couple weeks ago, I was scrolling through my social media, and I come across this guy with two other dudes. So they're doing like this video podcast interview, and they're talking about social media in general or something like that. And then a guy says, hold on, I want to give a big shout out to this guy named Calvin Wayman. I'm like, whoa, what's this? Because I didn't recognize the guy. And he's like, hand me the book. And then he shows my book up there on the screen and stuff like that. And I sit there and watch, and they proceed to talk about me and my book for 5 minutes. They're guys from Australia. I've never even been outside of the US in my life. Okay. Then he's like, okay, how did you meet Calvin? How are you following him? Comes to find out, he has been following me. His name's Gertz. I hope you're watching this, brother. You're freaking awesome. He's been following me for 6 months because I followed him on Instagram and he followed me back. And when I saw that he followed me back, I did a quick video and said, hey, brother, thank you so much for following me. Spent 4 seconds to do that video, okay? Because of that one real one-on-one, unscalable human connection, I've had his attention for 6 months. It's so humbling to even know that. He ended up buying a bulk order of my books and was giving 10 of them away on that podcast and was promoting me to other people. That is what we're talking about. That does not happen when you're trying and worrying about all this automation stuff. That's what happens when you worry about making these really real human connections, whether it's 1 follower, 1,000 followers. Connect with human beings, because that's what they are.
Yeah, and to me, Calvin, to take that one step further is that you did that with me as well. And that's what really honed me in on you as being that authentic person. But also in my eyes is I believe that's the true key to everyone understanding that at some level we're all influencers.
Yeah.
We don't have to have 100,000 followers or be asked to speak on a stage like that. If we're willing to commit to that type of engagement, we're creating influence.
Yes.
And,
totally with you.
I'm so glad that you put your book up for all of our audience to see on YouTube. For those of you on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher Radio, once again, my man Calvin dropped a book earlier this summer, and that book's called Fish Out of Water, The Guide to Achieving Breakthrough and Permanently Transforming into the New You. It hit #1 on Amazon's top 100 of all books in the success category. And Calvin did a pretty sweet launch of that book. He got to Facebook Live. He got to Periscope. He got to social media. And for, I believe it was 2 weeks, was driving just a lot of engagement about his book, and actually gave away some cool Apple products and some different things. And, Calvin, talk to us about how fun that was, because, man, you just seemed like you were having a blast.
It was the most fun I've ever done on social media, because the cool thing is all organic. It was just, I didn't spend a dime on any ads. And here's something, if there's anybody listening to this, watching this, that wants to write a book. Okay. One thing that helped me is having friends around me that helped me get out of my own way. I wrote my book in about a month and a half to 2 months. And it cost me a grand total of about $21 to produce. Okay. That's what's available, just so you know, in 2016, 2017. And so the whole launch was really just an experiment. Like you mentioned the stuff I gave away. Literally, I did not have the idea to do that raffle and to give stuff away until the afternoon before I was launching. Like, the book was available, but I wasn't announcing it. I was making it a big secret on my social media. Then I announced it on Facebook Live. And the day before, so on my social media, this is how it happened. My social media, I was like, dropping the big secret tomorrow. You're going to love it. And one of my Facebook friends named Lily was like, hey, you should do a raffle for people that get the closest in guessing what the surprise is. And I was like, yeah, that's funny. And I was like, I won't do a raffle for people that are guessing, but dude, I like the raffle idea for just people that buy a book. So I did that. And I just like, well, I love Apple. I have a Mac. I have an iPhone. I'm going to give away Apple products. And I had the people like, well, how did you afford that? Let me be a real open entrepreneur here. Again, I couldn't. I didn't. I put the caveat that we had to sell X number of books, and it was the revenue from the book sales that paid for the prizes. I didn't even have to pay for them. People that bought the book did, you know? So it was just an idea, and it worked. It was a ton of fun.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I love that caveat because, once again, it just goes to show the power of authenticity. You know, being authentic, being engaging is one thing, but not having to pretend to be some big baller shot caller is another thing. And ultimately, what I really loved from that concept, Calvin, is that I know for a fact that people that bought your book have read that book. They just didn't buy it. They might have bought it because they want to be a part of the raffle, but I know they read it because I see the reviews.
Yes.
I see the responses on your social media traffic. And, you know, one thing that I really am glad that you brought that up, and I want to allude to our audience members and our listeners, is that anyone can write a book because we all have a story.
Yes.
And Calvin legitimately walked through on some of his social media platforms about how he wrote this thing in a month and a half and self-published it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you also have some self-published kind of quick hit notes on your website as well at calvinwayman.com.
Yep.
So how interesting and how much of a learning curve was it for you from the self-publishing standpoint, and how much more better are you going to be for your next book?
First of all, it was surprisingly easier than I thought. Like the idea of a book, and I'm all about being real, and I'm not saying it was so easy to do everything, but it was still easier than I thought. Because there's a lot of authors I look up to that spent a year, 2 years, 5 years writing their book. But then I had some people that were in my circle that were like, no, if you really just block out all distractions, then you can do this. And guess what? I could have done it faster. And I'm saying that in a way that I was super distracted a lot of the time. What I loved about writing a book more than anything is what it taught me about myself and how easy it was for me to get distracted. Because the only way for me to write is if I didn't have any distraction. And my brain wanted to find any little thing to get distracted about. And I did. But it was easier than I thought. It's going to go better, the second book I write. The hardest part, to be honest, was the formatting. You know, it wasn't the content and me just spilling it out. It was the formatting of the book and figuring out how to do it in Microsoft Word to make sure the page numbers are lining up properly and the headlines are how I want them, and making sure that the page numbers that are in the freaking, the table of contents match up to the right page number so that people don't find the wrong page. You know, that was really the harder part. One little tip, if anybody's thinking to write a book, while I did hit into when I was writing a book, was organizing the content and like writing it and feeling I was rewriting it. Something I did, let's see if I can show you. One of my best tools that I had, for those of you on YouTube, was this when writing my book. And I'm holding up Post-it notes. So what I did when I was trying to get organized is any idea I had, I took a pen, I wrote the idea on a Post-it note and stuck it up to my wall. And any idea. So all the single ideas were just on the wall. So then my wall was filled with Post-it notes. And then once they were filled and it was all out of me, then I could be like, okay, this idea is a similar to this one. And then I just started organizing them and putting them together. And that was the biggest thing that got this snowball going down the hill, because I thought I had 7 core concepts. And by doing this, I found out I had 3, and it just simplified everything and got things moving. So that's one little thing that helped me massively. If anybody's thinking of writing their book, any idea that you have that's a core idea, put it on Post-it notes, stick it up on the wall, just puke everything out of yourself. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it out of you, put it on the wall, and then edit later.
Absolutely. And there again, for everyone out there listening, is that he created activity. He had the knowledge, he had the information, he had the burning desire, but it could have all wilted away had he not just started the process. So,
Yes.
Calvin, as we begin to wrap up the show, talk to us about your experiences with Entrepreneur Magazine, the Huffington Post, and the Social Media Examiner, and
It's been awesome.
How that's helped you just continue to, strengthen your purpose and maximize your audience reach.
It's been great in so many ways. The biggest thing that it has had is it's helped me with authority, really, with brand positioning. Because less than a year ago, nobody knew who Calvin Wayman was. I didn't have a huge social media following. As a matter of fact, a little bit more than a year ago, I was afraid to create a social media following. My picture, I didn't even put up my profile picture. It was a picture of Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes, and I think those getting on like Entrepreneur and stuff like that, that was like my coming out party in a sense, because people are like, oh my gosh, he's actually doing it, So got connected with Entrepreneur. And then after I wrote an article on live streaming for them, then I went to Huffington Post and wrote an article on social media in general. And things just started going one after the other. And then Social Media Examiner doesn't accept you in to even try to be in unless you have a track record. And so the track record of Entrepreneur and Huffington Post is what allowed me to go into there. And now I've been able to hang out with awesome people like Russell Brunson. I just wrote an article where I partnered with him, and I wrote an article and mentioned ClickFunnels and Russell Brunson. I couldn't have done that without the activity of being in it and already having done stuff that I could then say, yeah, I'd love to do this for you. So.
Yeah, I love that. And I think there again, too, it's a gift. You have a gift, and what you aren't doing anymore is being stingy with that gift. You're willing to put yourself out there, share that with the world. You're willing to open yourself up to get objections and to get scrutinized. But at the end of the day, I tell people very simple is that your gifts were given to you to share with everyone, not to be liked by everyone.
You are so on the money. You're speaking to my heart right now saying that, because a lot of times, especially when you're afraid like I was to step out, it's because you're in your ego and you think you're just doing it for you. But once you get into this thing, you start to realize, no, it's your duty, as Grant Cardone might say. It's your duty to be successful. It's your duty to share that gift that you have. Get out there and freaking share it with people. I love that.
So one final question for you, Calvin.
Hit me.
For those entrepreneurs who are just straddling the fence and, are really struggling with getting going, outside of just saying the typical answer of you just got to get started, what would be your best piece of advice for those entrepreneurs or those people that are wanting to create an entrepreneurial journey?
I think the best thing I can tell you is help you understand a concept, because I totally understand wanting to do something and staying stuck, because I was. And so here's a concept that I've learned over the last 12 to 18 months that'll help. First of all, plans suck. And I'll tell you what I mean. We want to go and do the thing, and we want it completely laid out, A, B, C, D, all through Z of what to do, right? So I'll ask the people, how many letters are there in entrepreneurship? There's not 26. There's only 3. And I'll explain that deeper. This is the concept that will get you moving. There's only 3 letters to entrepreneurship and to life in general. There's A, there's B, there's Z. You know where you are, and you know your next best guess. You know your next step. You at least have a really good idea of what your next step will be. You know your Z. You know where you want to ultimately end up, whether it's to be an entrepreneur or your next best step. But everything between B and Z is unknown. And that unknown is what keeps people stuck, is they think they're supposed to know it. I just want to be the voice to tell you, you don't need to know those. You can't know those. You cannot plan the steps to win a chess game. You can strategize. You can have a certain way you're going to do it, but you have an opponent. You have these unknown variables that change it. And the best thing that you can do is say, okay, this is the position I'm in now. This is what I know, and this is where I want to end up. What's my next best step? And that's why I quit my job. And I didn't realize this when I did it, but I know it now that that's what happened. I knew where I wanted to end up. I knew that I was an employee and didn't want to be, and quitting was the next step. I didn't know what C was. I didn't know what D was or E was. I just knew my B, which was step out, right? And something else that I think is a good idea to marriage with that is I'll actually give 2 bonus concepts that will make this work for you, because I want to give people the confidence that they are enough they can do it. The first one is successful people don't worry if they made the right decision or not. They make a decision and then make it right. Okay? Don't worry about if you make the right decision or not. Make the decision and then make it right. What that means is you know where you are, and you're going to be taking your next step, your B step. And there's going to be something that might, well, what if I take the wrong step? Listen, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you get in your doing mode and out of your don'ting mode. Get doing, right? Done is better than perfect is the second thing. The second tip that I want to put with that. Done is better than perfect, meaning getting out there and doing something is what matters. Because perfection, we're entrepreneurs, we're our own worst critic. But that perfection usually is just freezing us. Realizing that just doing something is better than nothing. Done's better than perfect. Just do something, and realize that instead of worrying if you made the right decision or not, the most successful people just make a decision and then make it right. Put the energies into the thing afterwards. Burn the boats. Don't worry about all the other options. Make it right by putting your energies into that. So I think those 3 things together, super useful. You know your Z. Just take the next best step. Take your next best guess. If you don't know what the next step is, just guess what B is. No done's better than perfect, and make a decision to do it, then make it right.
Done is better than perfect. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We have been blessed to have Calvin Wayman on the Power of Great podcast. I'm so thankful each and every week to be your host of this podcast that is live on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher Radio. But more importantly than that, understand this, ladies and gentlemen. Success is not measured by what you step out of, rather by what you are committed to step into. And I look forward to sharing with you in your journey as you pursue your power of great and recognize that your current situation is not your defining moment. We'll see you all next week.